Matt, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. So pleasure to see everyone. Matt Merrilees, CEO for the North America business at Globally, overseeing all of the region's performance here, supporting the U.S. and Canadian brands from an international strategy perspective. And yeah, no, excited I think today to work here with Kevin and more importantly let you hear from him. You know, the overall story of the group and where they came into their international journey, how and what their strategies and focuses have been, what hurdles and obstacles they faced along the way. Thank you, Kent. That's why we have you here. And yeah, no, I think it's most important to obviously get that across. So Kevin, if you want to go ahead and say hello.
Yeah, great to be with you all this morning. So I'm Kevin Runolfson. I'm the Director of Value Creation at Beauty Industry Group, and most of you have probably never heard of Beauty Industry Group. It's a company that is not recognized, but you might recognize the brands. And I'm actually new in the e-commerce world. I've only been here about 3 years. I come from healthcare, so I'm still learning a lot myself about it, and I'm glad to be with you today. So Beauty Industry Group started as one brand and has grown to 12 brands, mainly through acquisitions. And our mission is to deliver true beauty to the world. Our brands, 90% of our sales are hair extensions, and the other 10% are wet line and electronics, curling irons, crimpers, things of that nature. But it's a great business to be in. A few interesting things about our business. We like to say our supply chain goes from head to head, because literally our product is a donated item. But we take a lot of pride and have spent a lot of time, and I've been involved a lot since I've been with the company, and make sure that our products are ethically sourced, right? We don't want any of our product coming from any of the areas in the world that we're not supposed to be eating product. And interestingly enough, all of our products have to come from Southeast Asia. And so there's a lot of opportunity for coercion and other things there. So we've put a lot of checks and balances in place with third-party companies to verify what we're doing, and we want to be seen as the market leader in ethically sourced hair. And our brands, we have a multi-channel, multi-brand approach. So we work directly with customers. We sell direct to consumer, we sell direct to salon, and then we have distributors that we work with. And so we're trying to take a multi-channel approach to our business. So that's a little bit about us. We're based out of Salt Lake City, but our brands are all over the world. Australia, Toronto, the US, UK, and Germany, and we'll be, I'm sure, growing more. So that's a little bit about us.
All right, and then just to kind of give a quick segue about Globally and the business as a whole, but the business was founded in 2013 and has been around since, actually launched as a European, UK-based business, and then spread our wings all throughout Europe, here in North America, and then I think, just aligning with Kevin's discussion point there, seeing, boots in the ground now with Globally in Australia, also in Japan, also in Singapore, also throughout the world, right? And I think as we start to align with brands, we start to see a much more global footprint that is going to need to be supported more than just in the US market or within the European market, and how to think a bit more strategically. So I think when you look at it, obviously, some of the brands and logos here on the slide that we do operate and let's just say support from a global perspective in various different ways. We'll get into how we support a Beauty Industry Group, but yeah, as a business publicly traded, and a lot of exciting stuff to at least share with you here today.
So our business model is to acquire brands that have successful entrepreneurial leadership. And we don't go in and change their approach much. We go in and try and provide some support in the background, but we let them kind of run with what they want to do and maintain their approaches and so forth. And so we want them to have autonomy in how they approach their business. And so we've just wanted to make sure that we leverage our scope together and our strengths and have standard ways that we do things to deliver the best outcomes. And so we really let the brands, we empower them to do business as they choose. They really wanted to be able to offer a full range of products in the market. As you know, sometimes selling cross-border and internationally can be difficult because of the financial implications, and we wanted to find a way that we could offer all our brands the opportunity to do that with their full full product lines, and just let them monitor things and achieve what they chose to do. And so we wanted to partner with someone who could give us sort of a standardized process to achieve our goals and still, give that autonomy to the brands.
And I think this is something that we do a lot of with each one of the brands, right, that we end up working with. And I think when we do it, it's a globally index. We sit on a lot of data, right? As you can imagine, over 12 million transactions in an annual base spread across over 850 brands on a global cadence, not just here in the States. We sit on a lot of data, and it's really one to be able to help leverage and position each brand in order to be successful when launching an international strategy. So when you look at beauty in general, and this is always, the talking point, I think when I sit with a U.S. brand, it's very focused on, the English-speaking countries when we first start a partnership and a relationship, right? And I think there's always that focus to say, how do we put wind in our sail and accelerate the overall markets that we're operating today and do it better, right? But then I think there's also another big discussion, as I heard in the previous speaking, right? How do I engage awareness in the Middle East? How do I engage awareness within LATAM? How do I gauge awareness from this, what we call it, 24% of rest of world opportunity, which is a significant piece of the pie when you look at brands looking to tap into the international experience. So I think when you look at it right now, it's about not just understanding what the overall mix is, but it's understanding what the overall mix can be, and then how to tap in and help brands be able to achieve that growth in a strategic way.
Real quick on the rest of the world that I brought up earlier today. In that piece of the pie, what are you seeing? What can you share that, and maybe this is even the last, 6 months or so as I guess we're in post-pandemic world now.
Yeah, I think when you look at the piece of the pie, consistently across many of the brands, it does depend on the brand's current state when you walk into working with them. We have brands that essentially are looking to flip on international for the first time and really begin to dip their toes into the international market, which is a much different strategy than we may have with a brand that's in every single market already today, like an Adidas. And I think when you look at the different strategies, what we typically tend to see is the first overall step of the journey is, do you have a localized experience? Do you have an experience built out that if you're going to go out and spend money on an overall consumer to come to your site, are you going to be able to convert them? And that's where traditionally we begin with a brand. And if they have that set up, then it's about what is the overall omni approach, right? As Kevin and I work together with each one of his brands, there's a wholesale channel, there's a sales channel, there's a beauty channel. There are multiple channels that we need to make sure are working together to be able to have that omni experience market by market. And then I think when you start to look at some of the more sophisticated brands that are in these global markets today, it's become, I would say, almost a shift in international of how do I start to leverage inventory in a market without having to build out an overall digital footprint, which is not scalable. And I think when you start to look at it, it becomes, I want to offer, which is consistent with every brand, the full catalog of what my customer globally should be able to see, but I also want to position inventory in markets where I can tap into that inventory, yet maybe not have a full duplicate, a replicated inventory to be able to pull from, right? So there are products that should be served locally for some of these super sophisticated brands. There are products that then as a backfill should be filled from your home market so that you're not minimizing and losing sales as a result of depleting your inventory on what you would show to a customer internationally. So we've seen it in various different setups, but typically.
Yeah, and I know in the next session, this whole theme of today, getting closer to the global customer, getting that product closer, but not all global customers. Sometimes it's a case by case. So thanks.
Sure. All right, and I think as Kevin and I work together, I mean, a lot of his brands right now are currently running, not all, on Shopify. And I think Shopify, one of the consistent messages that we continue to see is that many brands today, didn't want to have a, call it, differing checkout solution from that of their domestic checkout to that of their international checkout. So we had worked very, very hard over the past, call it year or so here to build out native integrations with Shopify. Obviously, for some of you that may have seen it, we put out Shopify Markets Pro, which is one of our solutions with them, which is, super exciting to be able to talk through on some of those capabilities from a PR perspective that we announced. But then we also have, our enterprise solution, which is really, let's just call it tools and capabilities, but most importantly, allowing brands to be able to run their overall business from their native checkout, right? So running scripts, serving pricing locally, being able to have and not have to think about building out things that core functionality you should have on a platform, right? So, I think it's interesting as we go through the story. Many are Shopify, but many are also not. And I think there's some, from other platform capabilities that we had to be able to maneuver and pivot and work with, each one of the brands to support them.
So as we looked at what we wanted our approach to be, there were a couple of things that were important to us, and it might help you to understand a little bit about our product. Our products are very small, right? So our average order is less than 2 pounds, but the average order value significantly exceeds the de minimis amounts allowed to go into most countries. Another challenge that we've experienced during the pandemic is access to hair. We source a lot of hair, our manufacturers source a lot of hair out of India, other areas, and those borders were closed. And so it was difficult for us to say, okay, if we want to go into international markets, we'll just go out and buy more inventory. We couldn't do that because of access to product due to the pandemic. And so as we looked, we wanted to find a way that we could, we chose not to move the inventory closer to the customer, actually, because of the cost and the easiness of shipment, but we needed to find a way to give the customer a great experience because we weren't giving them a great experience. We didn't have certainty in some of the things that we'll talk about in a minute. And so as we worked together, we wanted to figure out a way to give them sort of a localized experience and messaging for the market. And so, when we worked with customers in Canada, we wanted to make sure we were giving that an experience that was unique to them, and then, the UK and other places. And so we worked with Globally and have been able to do that. It's nice when you go in, everything is done in their native language and their native currency, right? So there's no surprises, and that was difficult for us to give the customer a good experience when they were paying in dollars, and then there was some conversion that they were uncertain of, and then another problem was were the packages being sent with duties prepaid or duties unpaid, and so there was some surprises for the customer, right? Whether or not the cost that they had at checkout was truly their cost. And so we actually had customers declining delivery and having that product sent back. And as you know, international shipping is not cheap. And so we wanted to really give our customers an opportunity to experience our products in their native, local native currencies and languages and other things.
Yeah, and I think even to chime in on that, I think when you look at the overall capability from a delivery perspective, right? When I think we first started working together, it was let's move hair, right? Which came down to a shipping discussion, which is always part of that. How do we scale? How do we leverage scale to be able to get to, an economy that makes sense for the business, right? And I think those are the types of discussions, but it's also in that type of a space, it's about, yes, there's a cost to shipping. Everybody knows that. There's a conversion play around free shipping and how to leverage the two, but most importantly, there's also a strategy market by market to understand how you put those costs together to convert the customer and not impact your P&L. We don't like to ever have a brand dig into what their overall margins are to be able to drive conversion and growth. It's more about how do we understand what that overall retained margin strategy is for a brand, back into that and make sure you achieve the optimal growth that you're looking to see.
So a couple of things that we wanted to is, as you move into international markets or any market, you want to offer payment opportunities or payment processors that will more likely see the conversion occur. And so in our international markets, we were paying quite a bit of money for those, just the processing of the sale. And so Globally has given us an opportunity to have many more processors to help us convert those visits to our website, not just be lookers. And it also allows us to take advantage of the proposition in each market. So for example, in Canada, we chose to just add the duties that needed to be added going in. We didn't add the sales tax by province because we didn't want the product to look more expensive than it was, right? We wanted to minimize the price with the conversion rates and then see that the taxes were added in on the back while the duties are built into the price, where in other markets, everything is just built in because people are used to seeing it that way. So it's nice because we can customize for local markets as to how they'll see that. And at the end of the day, we want the conversion. And so this gives us an opportunity to do that in various ways. The other thing that's been helpful to us is, the shipping, they have relationships with various logistics companies and can get much better international shipping prices than we can get. I was looking at one of our brands that's not yet on the platform yesterday, and our average price is probably 50 to 100% more than what we're getting through our partnership with Globally. And so at the end of the day, not only can we lower the risk of margin erosion by using Globally, we can have planned costs in terms of shipping and other things. So we know that on an international sale, we can plan on a fixed margin, especially because, again, the pricing is set in the local currency and it moves with the market in a dynamic way, so there's no erosion there either.
Yeah, and I think as you look at payments and just bolting on a little bit of extra content to that, I think everybody right now recognizes fluctuation in currency is real, right? Over the past 2 months, I've seen some of our European brands' prices on their overall products skyrocket almost 20%, and it's about the proposition. How are you managing it? How are you actually staying ahead of the changes that are happening to make sure that one day you wake up and your prices to your customer on that experience isn't 20% higher than what they saw, the month or the quarter prior to, right? So I think those are the types of strategies when you look at, how do I build it market by market? How do I stay ahead of that curve? And how do I make sure that I'm driving the right solution for each market that I'm entering while watching out and maintaining your overall retained margin strategy is key. And when we look at, and we talk a bit about this, but this is more of a strategy on the overall deep market understanding, right? And this is about what is the strategy, right? Is there, and when we look at a market, it's not let's just turn on a market and sell this jacket in the same experience, in the same price strategy, in the same, duty and tax strategy, et cetera. It's how do we look at a market? How do we understand with a brand, what is your overall sell-through strategy in that market today? Is there wholesale? Is there marketplace? Is there stores? Are there, what is the strategy that you're looking to drive as a business? Do you have fixed prices? Are you looking to dynamically convert, and do we have flexibility to work with to build margin in for you as a brand so that we obviously internationally can convert customers no different than domestic? But long story short, whenever we build this out, we always build it out to the brand's decision, right? It's more of we're here to guide, we're here to lean on what we see from a data perspective works from brands within, and let's just say similar interactions within the platform that are duty inclusive versus not. Those that offer free shipping that don't. Those that offer flat rate or returns type competitiveness versus those that don't. So we look at every aspect of it. We serve up profile by profile to each one of the brands. Here's what may work for you in this specific market, and then usually we're pretty ambitious on you adopting them. But no, I think at the end of the day, it's the brand, right? It's the brand decision to obviously sign off on it. It's for us to help.
Hey, Matt, curious, this whole idea of preloading the tariffs and things like that. Are you guys doing any testing now that you can share? Are you seeing any, again, post-pandemic, findings that, have maybe been surprising or not so much?
Yeah, I think the testing is ongoing. It's one that we've built out a database to be able to understand from a testing perspective what works in every single market, right? And that is the second that we sit down with a client, we understand what their overall Google Analytics insights tell us from an overall brand perspective, and then we put it into our engine and we say into a market like Europe, into a market like the UK, there's a VAT inclusive expectation. So how do we build out that expectation? How do we factor in things like what your overall return rate is to be able to reclaim and build that into the financial model to make sure that every aspect of the journey is working, right? Canadian customers expect provincial sales taxes to be broken out. These are the types of anomalies that we've tested and iterated along the years of just our existence and are now able to literally put in a system. Here is what the optimal solution is into a specific market. How do we then back into the retained margin goal that each one of your brands have, which do slightly differ?
Can you give me an extreme example of just how far some of that product might be? And then are you able to share with us what the impact to margin and the customer experience has been to date? So is it taking an extra week to get the product there? I mean, there's so many variables, but I'm just curious to hear about some of the learnings from that extreme example.
Great question. So again, one of our challenges was access to product, as I mentioned. The second was our products are expensive on a per SKU item basis. And so for us to offer a reasonable offering in a market, we would have had to increase our inventory by 50%. We're owned by a private equity firm, right? And so they're concerned about how we're laying out spending capital and other things. And so we're able to be very efficient in our pick, pack, and ship, and our warehousing costs are low in the U.S. And so, we did the analysis and said, for another $10, we can get this package there in 3 to 4 days using the express method, and that's cheaper for us right now in the market we're in than it is to go out and spend 20, 30 million in capital, open a new warehouse, or partner with a 3PL and increase all our expenses. We wanted to leverage our fixed assets, and that's something that's probably unique to us, but we just found every time we modeled it out, it just didn't make sense based on our sales in those markets. Now, we'll look at that in the future because as we expand more, we'll have more DCs throughout the world, and that may make sense for us then. But right now, it just didn't. In the pandemic world. Hopefully that answers your question.
So what was the extreme example? So you're using inventory from the U.S. and you're shipping it where? Again, as an extreme. Are you shipping it to China? Are you shipping it
Middle East, UK, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things, and when Kevin and a lot of the brands, everyone's got a different strategy, but it's been we want to ship here and we want to ship it express. So I was like, that's going to be fun. But I think when you look at it right now, it's to the point of, yes, Express is a network provider. It's a bit more reliable. Yes, it's got the experience, the LTV play that a lot of the brands were looking for. But we worked very hard with them to say, how do we get you some of that margin back, right? They had some price flexibility in these markets to be able to say, if I round prices as an example, we push that margin back to the brand, right? Rounding prices makes a number look nice. It converts better. It settles the daily fluctuation of currencies so customers are not price shopping. But most importantly, it gives the brand margin back, right? And then I think the second piece is how do we even build some of that margin into the overall product values with some of their brands that actually have higher AOVs, right? 1 to 2 percentage points can help make some of that back and then build and really start to leverage things like free ship thresholds. What's the right optimal positioning to have a free ship threshold to convert a customer, but then to also start to push flat rate, shipping, let's just say strategies to be able to blend and still reach customers. Because when you look at Express, we're servicing them right now, it's roughly 1 to 2 days into Canada. I'd say right now some of their Canadian shoppers are getting, let's just say, orders quicker than they are domestically, right? And then you look into Australia, we see when you have a multi-carrier mix, Australia right now standard, I'm sure many of the brands in here have felt, it's not a good solution at the moment, right? I think we're seeing a huge amount of delays. It's unfortunate, but this is something that you need to keep an eye on because then when it recovers, we need to be able to get back to that mix, which is a standard combination. So every market is different. And I think how to get there, the strategy-wise, it varies. But
And I would say because of the AOV of our product, the customers that are buying them internationally are okay with the express shipping. And the nice thing about this is we can, like Matt said, we can round up a little bit and pick up some of that margin for the shipping just in the transaction itself. But we're seeing much better delivery times and better customer satisfaction at a lower cost.
the implications to everything from inventory management, right? If there's a promotion happening in the Middle East that maybe no one knew about, and all of a sudden your inventory just went away for U.S. and other regions, it would be interesting to understand the implications as a case study outside of this conversation. But it just seems like it's massive number of things to think about.
And I think two other things that I've seen with some brands in the portfolio and a shift happening lately is we've seen some brands that manufacture goods in Asia, as many do, right? And we've started to see, literally brands taking, and we're servicing the domestic market for U.S. brands right now, where they're taking the domestic leg out of the equation completely because some of them were struggling with getting product to the U.S., as Kevin had been. But we're seeing a shift where it's let's ship it direct to consumer from Hong Kong, as an example. Let's go ahead and strip out that overall arena, and we've seen that shift. We've seen some brands shifting into Mexico to be able to leverage some of the duty advantages to be able to then truck across the border, then serve international and domestic from there. So I think it's changing with the supply chain challenges that we see across the brands. It's one of the questions I have for every one of the brands that I speak to on a regular cadence is, how are you getting your product? Are you struggling? If so, what's your strategy? How do you drive demand? How do you, a lot of hype brands, which I know we heard of earlier, they have their own demand. So it's interesting, but yeah, for sure after we can catch up.
Okay, one thing is I could see the clock here. So we got about 5 minutes. Jump in with questions. That was great. I appreciate it. And let you guys keep rolling.
Yeah, and I think headwinds right now is something every single brand that I speak with wants to know what others are doing, right? I think when we kind of, let's just say, summarize headwinds that we're facing as a business, as an industry, as an entire world, you've seen inflation hit, you've seen COVID relief hit, you've seen the war in Ukraine and the impacts that obviously we've had in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, you've seen the energy crisis. Brands right now, from an international perspective, as we sit through the lens of the brand, is we're seeing the US much less impacted. We're seeing Canada much less impacted. We're seeing some of these markets down, and it's really our job to just help serve up to the brands why they're down, what's happening out in the world, how do you stay ahead of the curve to remain profitable, and most importantly, what are your peers doing, right? Which is what is always a topic for conversation is how do I sit in comparison to my peers in the group, right? You've got a lot of brands, you've got a lot of insights. Tell me if I'm the only one that's either declining at this moment or excelling at this moment, and if so, what market should I start to get a bit smarter with my spend, whether it be digital, whether it be, however. So.
And we had that exact discussion 2 weeks ago on a call. We were seeing some changes in one of our markets with one of our brands, and it was nice to be able to say, hey, overall, what macro trends are you seeing? Are we reflective of what's going on generally, or are we an anomaly? And so it's nice to have a partner that can share that with us versus sort of guessing, is it us or is it something else? And we don't want to do anything to cause special cause variation. For those of you who know what that is. We want to stay right in line with where we should be. So one of our brands is Beauty Works. It's based out of the UK. And again, they encountered many of the challenges I explained before. Not a great customer experience on international sales, not a lot of experience understanding how to make sure that all of the duties and taxes were dealt with appropriately. The currency conversions and all those things. Again, that's something all of our brands experienced in the cross-border sales. And so after their implementation of the Globally platform, you can see that they had some pretty significant success. Their conversion rates increased significantly, number of orders increased, and their revenue went up, right? And a lot of these brands are native to the country where they're based, and so they want to grow more. There's a great opportunity for growth. I was told the other day that only 3% of women wear hair extensions. So there's a 97% market out there for us. And so we want to find a way to get to those markets, right? And convince them. And so this is just a great tool that we've had, and it's helped us. Again, what it does, it allows us to optimize our local proposition and to see what's happening in local markets and see how we can best do that. As I mentioned, we're seeing much more business in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and other places. And so having data in markets that we're not as familiar with as we partner with Matt and Globally is helpful. And then we can customize those propositions. So sort of what's next for our beauty industry group with Globally. We've got 5 of our brands right now that are on it. And then we'll be working on implementation with our 2 other brands, Donna Bella and Hidden Crown. Hidden Crown will benefit greatly from this because a good portion of their business is outside the U.S. They're seen as a luxury brand in the hair extension space, and so there's demand on an international basis, and this will help us significantly improve our margins with that brand, where we're struggling a little bit on that right now. So we're headed down that road, and then we'll move into probably some of our direct-to-salon brands as well later.
So Matt and I aren't really the target market. Talk to Scott Silverman. He's a hair extension candidate, I think. Anyways, any last questions or anything like that? Sorry, we pick on Scott's hair. Well, let's do this. How about a round of applause? Thank you guys for wrapping up.